Implication question asks about a buyer's situation, such as consequence, effects, or implication. They help you to sell by building a severeness of the buyer's problem so that it becomes large enough to justify the actual purpose is to develop the clarity and strengthen the buyer's problem by focusing on the consequence of the problem, extending and expanding the effect of the problems, and linking the problem with other potential problems. Okay. So what does that really mean? Implication questions are powerful needs development tool. They expand the buyer's perception of the value, and they are harder to ask than situation and problem questions. Some example of implication questions: could an increase in the value of the component result in a greater risk of a theft? How might that affect your insurance cost? To ask good implication question, you need planning. Implication questions don't just follow automatically from your mind. Okay, even the most experienced seller has to think about their implication question ahead of time planning. Number two, business knowledge. You have got to understand why a problem might be important to the buyer and what business issues might make it more significant than the buyer realized. Number three, application knowledge. You must know the kinds of problems your service or products are able to solve so that you can select the most appropriate implied needs to develop. Right? It is crucial to plan implication questions in advance of buyer call. Why? Since they don't automatically come to your mind. No planning could cause you to miss the opportunity to ask appropriate implication questions when they might have the most impact. Cause you to fall back in appropriate situation, problem questions, and that lost the credibility. Divert the buyer's attention from the problem you can solve to the problems you cannot solve. The goal of implication question is to build the significance of the problem so that it's clear and strong enough to lead the buyer to feel a strong want or desire from you and your services, your products. So it's important to be clear about specific problem the buyer has that you can solve before planning your implication question. Fourth step for planning effective implication questions. Make sure you have all the problem questions necessary for you and the customer or the client to uncover and clearly understand the relevant problems. Those you can best solve for the buyer. Select the key problems you have already identified that have or that are most likely to have implication you can develop into a need for your product or services. Use the form on the next page. Link the selected key buyers problems on the left and list all the possible relevant implications that you think might increase the significance of the problem to the right. Prepare some actual implication questions to ask your buyer. How do you phrase effective implication question? It's important for your implication question to sound natural and relate appropriately to the buyer's problem. Vary the way you state the implication question. To be more effective, you need to help the buyer see the severeness of the problem by preparing some implication question before your meeting and using a very phrase such as: what effect does that have? How often does that cause? What does that result in? Does that ever lead to? Using a very different kinds of questions. The key is to ask questions in the sequence that best enable you to establish the context, uncover, and develop the buyer's problem. Link your questions as you have learned to do in the situation questions. Link your buyer's statements. Link your questions to personal observation. Link your question to third-party situation.